This is the 2023 Lexus LC500 Coupe, and it stands out as the Lexus flagship model thanks to its unique styling, exciting powertrain, and its luxury presence. But this car is also a grand touring car, which means that it has its roots in sporty driving, but it can also be driven from here in Phoenix, Arizona, and take it all the way to here by the beach in California, and you can do it comfortably, easily, and you can still take your sports car with you for sporty driving in another location, and that's one of the biggest benefits of getting a grand touring car like this. Lexus graciously let us take this car all the way to California so we could experience the grand touring lifestyle with the LC500. Now, part of that lifestyle includes a fantastic, comfortable road trip, and once you finally get to your destination, you're able to take this car to the beach. You can park it in at the South OC Cars and Coffee so everyone can check out your awesome Lexus, including getting all the compliments you could imagine. You can then take the car to the fair and even take it for a sporty drive in the canyons if you feel that exhilarating rush. Now, the base trim of the Lexus LC500 starts at just over $93,000, and this car that we have today as equipped comes in at over $106,000. And the main add-ons there are the heads-up display, the Mark Levinson sound system, and this car even has the dynamic handling package. So in today's video, we'll be walking you through the exterior of this car. Of course, we'll take a look at the interior, the awesome, exciting powertrain, and of course, we'll take the car for a drive. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Life is too short to drive boring cars!
So starting with the exterior of our Lexus LC500, we can see first just how gorgeous this car is. I mean, first of all, it's got a fantastic sports car presence. You're gonna get plenty of compliments while driving this around Cars and Coffees or on the beach, whatever the case, you're gonna get a ton of compliments, especially when you get a premium paint job like this cadmium orange, which has this cool metallic flake that looks absolutely fantastic in the sun. One of the other cool elements is that this doesn't quite look like any other Lexus. It can't be mistaken for anything else, and this car doesn't even look like anything else around the price point. It has such a unique presence about the car. It's sure good to stand out, and these wide rear fenders are just begging to have these massive tires put underneath them in the rear. Now let's talk about some of the other cool stuff that's going on here in the front, including some things that you're probably not familiar with and what makes this car so special. So as we take a look, let's start with the Lexus grille. Now this is a fairly symbolic thing for the Lexus brand. You'll find this on a lot of the different vehicles in varying ways. In this case, we have it very sharp as it follows the contours and wants to make sure it has this pointy bullet style nose that the car styling seems to follow. It's finished in this metallic gray, which is a great contrast to our cadmium orange paint. But then it also has some additional chrome around the outside as well, which is a really nice touch. But where it really gets fun is with the headlights and the DRL system on either side. So we have the triple beam headlights in here, which are LEDs. And the cool part about that is there's a multiple triple beam LED setup for different Lexus models. Sometimes they're horizontal. In this case, we have this cool triangle profile that fits the lights, including having some more cool stylized lightning bolt style stuff in the headlight itself, which is a really cool attention to detail feature. We have some of our more metallic gray around the outside and some more painted cadmium orange bits, and then the DRLs are sort of sunken in here, and they have this cool swoosh shape to them that really just evokes the whole speedy nature of this vehicle, which I think is really cool. We do have these vertical LED turn signal lights on the side that are next to these cool functional vents, which of course any functional vent is a cool vent in my opinion, and it's up here nonetheless. As we go around, we can see we have this super low slung profile of the hood, and there's some really important engineering details behind that to make that happen. Now they have this cool custom multi-link suspension for the front, and they put a lot of engineering effort to make that happen because obviously this has a 5-liter V8 that sits under the hood, and that's a lot of motor to put under there. So in order to get this super cool low slung profile, it's probably about 2 or 3 feet off the ground total. You have to do a lot of engineering to make sure you can still fit your wide tires, be able to adjust all of the extra componentry, and they were able to fit it in here. And on top of that, we have a lot of cool components like aluminum control arms that actually sit under here, along with a variety of other aluminum components that help keep the weight relatively light and allow more room and for a better driver experience. On top of that, this particular car features some additional upgrades. These wheels on the side here are actually an upgrade. Standard is 20 inches. This car has the premium alloys, which are part of our dynamic handling package. That increases the wheel size to 21 inches. And these have a very cool chrome and black mix, but more importantly, behind that are massive brakes, which have aluminum calipers, and these rotors themselves are absolutely massive. This car is fairly heavy at around 4,300 pounds, but these brakes will bring it to a stop in no time, I promise, and this car just handles fantastic as a result of it. Now, the dynamic handling package also introduces some other cool features. We have a Torsen limited slip differential. We also have rear wheel steering, and we even have an adjustable ratio for our front steering as well. So lots of really cool components that get added in as part of that dynamic handling package. It's easy to see where that money goes and all of the driving benefit that you get by opting for that package. As we move to the side of the vehicle here, we actually have our sided power mirrors. So what these power mirrors will do is, of course, they will automatically fold in as you lock the car, but you can also manually fold them in with the power button. They'll push it and they'll fold in, and so you can make it parking easier, or in this case, moving it into a studio. If you're worried about parking it at a car show, whatever the case, you can adjust it so these don't get in the way. Now, one of the other cool features about this particular car is we have a carbon fiber roof. So not many cars around this price point will come with a lot of exposed carbon fiber, but this one has it, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Again, mixed with that cadmium orange paint, it's a really nice contrast with some extra chrome around the exterior that just really presents the car really well. As we come around, we have some side skirts for the car as well. We have some hidden door handles in here that, of course, has the Lexus keyless entry. So if you go ahead and just touch the door, this handle will pop out and then you can go ahead and pull your door open. As we get in there, we have these cool sunken side vents that look very nice, and they have this nice accent as we expand the rear quarter panel so we can get access to our wheels. One of the other cool things as we get to this driver's side is we actually have the tank cover for our gas cap. And this is actually a locking gas cap cover, so you have to push a button on the inside before this to open up. So it's just that added peace of mind for security as you're going throughout the car. We have this really cool swept back fastback profile that is a mix of our sort of piano black exterior with some really cool windows fastback options that just make this thing look really slick. And on top of that, as we get to the rear, there's some interesting things going on in here. So we did make a video with a hybrid LC500 that had a static carbon fiber wing, which is one of the other options. There's also a convertible option that's available. But this particular car has some cool stuff going on with the trunk. One of that being that we have these added lines in the middle. And those added lines in the middle are actually for our speed activated sport wing, which is a pretty cool feature and could also be manually raised from the inside, which is what we'll cover more of later. One of my favorite things on the exterior of the Lexus LC500 is actually going to be the taillights. The taillights have a really powerful exterior image, just the way the headlights do in the front, except the headlights have this really cool holographic display for the way that they present themselves, where they look like they're layered, which again is more styling, cool aspects that you will not find on any other car on the road. And on top of that, we have a little bit of a little baby diffuser with some little fins in the bottom as well, which is always nice to see on the exterior of vehicles. But there is so much to look at with this vehicle, so much attention to detail. The more you look at it, the more you're gonna like the car. And of course, you're gonna get a ton of compliments, I guarantee it, with the Lexus LC500. But with that, it's time to take a look at what's going on in the interior. So now we're on the interior of our 2023 Lexus LC500, and the first thing you'll notice as you get in here is just the premium qualities and materials that get used in it, but there's also a very unique bespoke approach to this car. But there are some standard Lexus qualities as well, like the little horns here for some of the driving modes, and even some of the other stuff that we'll get into as we go throughout the car. The first thing I want to talk about is actually the premium materials in the car. This particular car has a mix of leather and Alcantara, which comes as a huge upgrade, including these awesome bolstered seats. So we can see we actually have Alcantara centers in the seats as well, but we have a ton of bolstering. The Alcantara in the center is, of course, perforated because this has heated and ventilated seats. But on top of that, we actually get leg bolsters, which is not something you see very often in most of the standard cars, but it's included in here, which means that these seats will be ready to use for more sporty driving. And of course, they are power adjustable, along with even having some lower back adjustment bits as well. We have some more bolstering up top, as well as a fairly cool sporty headrest. And it's just a really good looking seat, which has a really functional approach to it. And I appreciate that we get the luxury benefits of having a grand touring interior with very premium materials, but you have all the bolstering for both yourself, your torso, and your legs, which is a cool add-on for when you want to be sporty. Now, looking at some of the other bits that are in here, we do have an Alcantara headliner as well. It is very soft and looks very clean, very sporty as it gets added on with our leather-wrapped steering wheel. The actual interesting part about this car is Toyota and Lexus generally tend to include a lot of buttons in the cars. This car still has a fair amount of buttons along with the Lexus touchpad because this car was originally debuted in 2017. But there are some different bits in here that are actually automated because this is a Lexus and this is the flagship. So they have some new cool technologies like the Lexus Climate Concierge, which is actually going to automatically manage your climate control for you. Now, on the off chance that you don't want to do that and don't want to use the automatic function, we actually have this cool array of metal buttons here that you can actually click and adjust for all the various AC controls. That is all adjustable through here. You can also click auto. You have dual zone climate control, so you and your passenger can adjust it separately. But if you do want to manually adjust the seats, unfortunately, you do have to use this Lexus trackpad. You can go ahead and go in here, go through some options, and you can get to the seats where you can then leave it in auto, or of course you can adjust the seat controls and some of the various other controls that exist here by going through everything that's available, including managing the Climate Concierge. So that's a quick way to look at some of the other adjustable bits, because of course if you're here in Phoenix like we are right now, it's fairly hot here. Thankfully we're in a studio, but you get access to all of the AC amenities that you'll need when surviving in the desert. So let's talk about some of the other things that are going on. In the center console here, we have our shifter, which is the fairly stereotypical Lexus shifter for our automatic 10-speed. But around that, we have our park buttons, we have our emergency brake hold, but there's a really cool button just below that. This button is actually a spoiler button. It's a manual lift for the speed-activated ring in the back. So if you push it once, it turns green and it lifts the spoiler up. And then if you go ahead and hold it, the spoiler retracts, and that's pretty cool. There's also a menu here in the MID in front of the driver that can actually show you the spoiler position of the car as well, but I'll get into that in a sec. Next to that, we have more of our standard controls because this is not actually a touchscreen that sits up here, but in fact we have all of the managing controls here, which includes the Lexus touchpad, which you may be familiar with. This is in a variety of vehicles. We also have some cool hidey hole spots. We have a cup holder that pops out pretty quickly here. We have some handholds that are kind of emergency handholds for rough high-G situations for the passenger on the side. And then back here we have one of my favorite things that just speaks volumes about the quality that goes into this car to remind us that while it is a sports car, it's also a grand touring car. So we can pull this back and we get access to what doubles as a cup holder or just a generic sports pouch, but you can also open it up and then you have more storage space. You get access to charging ports, and it's just a cool touch in there. But let's say you don't want this, and now that you're ready for this to be hidden because you want your armrest back for your road trip, you can really just tap this once and it has this sort of soft close feature, and I think that's a really cool touch. Obviously a lot of engineering and a quality touch that you won't find in many other cars. As we focus on what's in front of us as the driver, we have some really cool displays that are a nod to some of the other things that are in the car as well. So this car is obviously heavily inspired by the V10 powered Lexus LFA supercar, and to carry on that, the first thing you'll notice is you have this cool sort of physical display in the middle of the car, even though the actual display itself is digital. And by pushing this button, it moves off to the side and you can change some of the effects. So if you want it centered, you could do that. But you can also touch this button here and you can physically move this display, and it's going to split up the way things look, and you can still use both of the regular functionality no matter how you have it set up. It's really just a personal preference thing, and then you have all of your lights on the outside as well. With that, on the steering wheel, as you're going through some of the buttons to control everything, we actually have these magnesium paddle shifters in the back here, which are massive, and the benefit of that being they're also attached to the wheel. Benefit of that being is as you're driving, you can actually just tap them pretty easily with either 1 or 2 fingers, depending on what your preferred driving position or what kind of corner you're in. It'll be fairly easy to get a hold of that. We can also function through our multi-informational display here in front of us, which of course we currently have it set to miles per gallon because that's important that it beats the EPA like I mentioned. You have your lane tracing assist controls, so it gives you kind of the guidelines. You can have nothing visible. You can do the rear wing position as I mentioned earlier. You have G-force, miles per hour or kilometers adjustment, your gear position, so it'll actually show you which of your 10 speeds you're currently in. Tire pressure, that's always important for modern cars for road tripping. Your range, range along with your average speeds, and then we get back to miles per gallon. So cool functionality, various things are available, but we also have some volume controls. We have the talk to your Lexus buttons as well, along with some of your phone controls. We have our radar cruise control buttons, as long as the manual cruise control buttons, lane tracing assist, modes, and some other activation features. So really, you have everything that you need. One of the things that I like is buttons that you're not frequently going to be using in the interior. Lexus has actually stashed away. So for example, the brightness of the actual displays and the odometer trip stuff is actually hidden away over here on the driver's left side. So you don't see it. It's not overly easy to get to, but you can adjust it when you need to, but it's not something you're going to be using regularly, so it's not readily available, and it leaves this place feeling less cluttered, which I personally really appreciate. Up top, we have some more Alcantara in the center here, but we have our drive modes. We have traction and snow on the left, then we of course have normal/custom, then below is comfort eco, and then sport and sport plus, which I'll talk more about as we get into the driving section. In front of that though is one of our awesome options, and that's going to be our 10-inch heads-up display. Now the cool part about that heads-up display is it'll obviously show you your speed, RPMs, but it'll also show you your direction. So it has a compass if you're going north-south, whatever. Your gear, it'll show the lane tracing assist and any other driving heads-up that you might need, but it also shows you navigation directions. So if you have the maps up and your destination set, it's going to show you the next steps and where you're going to be heading. And it's also going to show you the speed limit. So it's going to pick up based on what it sees. It can show you the speed limit in your local area. So in case you missed it, it's going to be there right there in front of you. Easy to access, so you don't have to take your eyes off the road and can remain safer while driving your Lexus LC500. We also have some of our other locking buttons, like I mentioned, for the gas caps and stuff to the driver's knee on the left, including a trunk release. We have our memory suite switches, but one of the cool parts that I like about this, aside from just the styling, is the fact that these windows actually have this really cool like ceiling feature. So as the windows go up, you'll notice the sound difference between the outside and when the window goes up, and that just shows the sound deadening that went into this car, and it's really impressive. We have this really cool styling throughout the car, and it's not actually symmetrical. We have these really cool door handles that look fantastic, along with more Alcantara in the doors, but then the actual vents are also not symmetrical. The driver has one on the left of the steering wheel, but then the other one is in the center, whereas the passenger vents are actually over here above the glove box, and there's two vents along with another one on the side. Now, a nice touch that's kind of subtle and that you may or may not care about is the fact that our Lexus clock in the middle, which comes fairly standard, actually has a carbon fiber face on it, which is a cool touch because this being the flagship, being a sports car, obviously has a little bit more of a sporty mentality to it, and that's a good way of adding it on there. We do have a rear view mirror up top here, which has some digital dimming and auto dimming and things like that. But some more cool technology would be the way that door lights work. So obviously these are your helpful lights as you need them, but they don't work by touching any buttons. That would be too boring. Instead, you touch the light itself and they can come on each side, which is a pretty cool touch, and it works flawlessly. And one thing I did want to add is the infotainment system does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it's actually really responsive. I don't spend much time waiting for things when you're quickly going through and just pressing buttons and trying to manage things and move around. And the Lexus trackpad isn't that bad. It is something that you'll have to get used to if you're not familiar with it, but once you get used to it, it's no problem at all. So lots of cool features, and you can even manage and adjust a lot of this stuff, a lot of the very functionalities, whether you want the auto options on or off, including the fact that when you get out of the car, the auto adjust will actually move the steering wheel and the seat back, move everything out of the way for you, but you can adjust that, turn it off, whatever pleases you. So that's a pretty cool feature. Lots of technology obviously is the main focus of what's going on in the LC500, but also providing that very comfortable experience. And I can say, after sitting in these seats for 5.5 hours to drive all the way to California, I can tell you that these seats are very comfortable and you'll have no problem sitting in them for long drives, and they're going to hold you in place when you are going to get sporty and they're going to be a bit more sideways. Now, this is a Grand Touring car, so it does actually have a back seat. So let's talk about that a little bit. There's not a ton going on. The back seat is mostly reserved for passengers without legs, but you could potentially fit a passenger in there in a pinch if you really needed to, or maybe even kids, but it's definitely not going to work for a long-term use vehicle. But what that does mean is you have some awesome trunk space. You have a ton of trunk space in the back, but you could also put more stuff in the interior of the car as well, meaning that you could take essentially as many bags as you want with you on your trips in your Grand Touring LC500. Last, but perhaps most importantly, is the Mark Levinson sound system. It's a premium option. The regular sound system in the Lexus is 12 speakers, but the Mark Levinson system bumps that up to 13, and it has the reference surround sound system, which is absolutely incredible. The Mark Levinson system is always a recommended option across the board for any Lexus, and I can tell you from here in the LC500 is a welcomed option, and I love having it in this car. So it's another add-on that just really completes that package, and you do have some signs, including some of the speakers speaker bits in the back of the car that show you the benefits of having the LC500. And as a fun little side note before we move on to the drive, you can even see the portion of the rear wing as it pops up and moves on. But with that, I think we should actually jump to what's under the hood and our powertrain for our LC500. So under the hood of our 2023 Lexus LC500 is a gorgeous, naturally aspirated 5-liter V8, which produces 471 horsepower, 398 pound-feet of torque, and it's paired with a 10-speed automatic transmission. And with the active sport exhaust, this thing sounds absolutely incredible both on startup and under power while giving it revs. Now with that 5-liter V8 and our 10-speed automatic transmission, this car can do 0 to 60 in just 4.4 seconds per Lexus, but I personally think you can easily get this into 4.2, 4.3 seconds based off how fast it is, and that is faster than some cars with even more horsepower than this car has, which is really impressive and gives a testament to some of the wheel handling and some of the traction capabilities of this car as well. On top of that, it has an electronically limited top speed of 168 miles per hour, which is plenty, more than you can do legally on any US road, and of course should be more than enough for any track days or even any autocross courses that you plan on entering your LC500 while you're on your road trips, which I think is a cool blend of technology and performance that we get from the engine. Aesthetically, we've got some cool bits. It does have an engine cover that has these sort of pseudo carbon fiber bits over top of it, including a Lexus badge. We can see some of our air ducting for our air filters and just the sheer quality of engineering. There's no ugly welds. Everything is just displayed really neatly in this car, and it's just a really cool looking package for what is such a great engine. But because this is a Lexus product, odds are you won't really have to be under the hood very often, if ever, thanks to a lot of their reliable vehicles. And it's very cool. If you're interested, there are actually other powertrain options. We actually made a video with a hybrid that has the V6 hybrid powertrain, so you can check out that video if you're interested in seeing some of the other versions of the Lexus LC500. So while we have the hood open, let's talk about fuel economy, which isn't necessarily so important for sports cars, but it is something to consider for a Grand Touring car, being that you are likely going to end up driving your LC500 all over the place because, of course, it's gorgeous and fun to drive, so why wouldn't you? Now, this is a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8, which is not known for its fuel economy, but the EPA rates it at 16 miles per gallon city and 25 miles per gallon highway with 19 combined. So not too shabby there, but here's the cool part. I did take this car to California, and on the drive there, I actually managed to exceed the EPA ratings for this car and getting an average of 25.4 miles per gallon, leaving the car in normal mode on the drive to California. And I think that's incredibly impressive because that means this car with its 21.7 fuel tank, you could easily get over 400 miles of range, meaning you only have to fill up once on most really long road trips, mostly even just for your security in that case, which I think is incredibly impressive for a performance car like the LC500. Now, on top of that, while you're doing regular commuting, we found that our average tended to stay in the high 24s while doing a mixture of driving here in Phoenix. So that includes a mixture of highway driving along with city. Now, if you do tend to put the car in sport mode and get on it a little bit more, you find yourself on the lead foot side of things, your experience will probably be a little bit worse than what I did, but I did not do anything extreme either. So you could also get even better gas mileage than I did if you choose to leave the car in some of the lighter modes. Make sure you take your foot off the gas early. Plenty of room to be had with this car, but I think it's impressive that in regular driving I was able to get that good of fuel economy with this car. So not the most important thing to consider when buying a car like this, but I thought it was worth mentioning just because I thought it was impressive. Okay, so what's it like to drive the LC500? Well, first and foremost, there's sort of two approaches that you can take. Obviously, as a Grand Touring sports car, you can either drive it in a sporty manner or you can choose to drive it in a more relaxed manner. So currently we've got the car in drive and it's very smooth. The adaptive suspension is going to work with you to make sure that ride is as great as possible. There's a ton of sound deadening, as I mentioned earlier, so everything is really quiet. You really don't hear anything on the outside unless you choose to put your windows down, or you can drown it out with the Mark Levinson sound system as well. well, which is always a plus. As far as the steering is actually on an adjustable ratio, so it actually changes throughout. So sometimes you can get away with doing little turns that'll actually be all you need in order to get it go certain distances. And some of the other cool features, like we mentioned, the rear wheel steering is not something you'll really notice ever, but it's going to make sure that you have a shorter turning radius. So when doing things like making a U-turn, this car, even though it's on the bigger side, is actually easy to turn in just 2 lanes and make that U-turn. So that's a cool benefit when it comes to doing things like parallel parking. This car's been no problem on the streets of California, and so it's just a pleasure to drive in that sort of daily regard. Now, let's say you want it to be a little bit sporty. Well, the first thing you can do is turn your knobs up here and go ahead and put it to, let's say, sport. And then you can go ahead and pull the shifter back and put it in manual mode. And now we can hold the revs out and we can use the paddle shifter. And you can hear just how responsive that is. You're going through, click, shift. Immediate shift times from that 10-speed automatic transmission. It is absolutely incredible. And then on top of that, as if the quick shifting isn't enough, if you are on this thing underway, as we're going to get on the freeway here in a bit so I can show you, you get fantastic noises from the blips of the engine and the transmission as they work together to give you that incredibly fast 0 to 60 time, which is all the more impressive. And as we're coming up here to get ready on the freeway, we'll even include some downshifts, which of course sound phenomenal. The engine that sits behind you here, the audible tones that you get while driving really add to that feedback. And of course, in my opinion, there's nothing better than a naturally aspirated V8, which is what we've got under the hood here. So here we are coming up on the freeway, so we can get some decent acceleration. And then even coming in, we've currently got a red light, but no problem as we decel. Oh yes. So good, so good. All right, make sure it's safe to go. Oh Lord. So good. And then now that you're on the freeway, you can choose to put the car in eco mode, or let's say you can even choose to put the car back in drive, and it's no problem, so the car is now shifting for you. Now on top of that, let's talk about some of the different sport modes that are actually included in the LC500. So I mentioned a lot of them earlier. We don't need to go into snow too much. This isn't really a snow car, but of course you could potentially put ski racks on the top if you felt so inclined to do so. But we do have the different sport modes. So obviously the top 2 sport modes, especially in automatic, are just going to hold those transmission revs out a bit more, even disengaging some stuff, but it's best served with the flappy paddles here, those magnesium paddle shifters. Make it a ton of fun to drive and make it very trackable, or perfect for, like we mentioned earlier, autocross in that instance, if you just want to get out and drive the car that much more. And the other cool thing about this car is that it does have the eco mode, which I haven't really messed with much, because what that's also going to do is it compare with the Lexus Climate Concierge to automatically adjust things, and it might turn down the AC slightly, which of course is going to have a toll on your just greater fuel economy. So it's going to adjust that. So if you don't want it to mess with that too much, don't worry about putting it in eco mode or worrying about putting the climate system in eco mode. But as far as just general feeling, I mean, the steering wheel is comfortable and the seats are comfortable. You're not getting thrown around while you're driving it. The suspension's fairly responsive as far as the adaptive part goes, and you just have a ton of fun. Now, from a sports car perspective, the cool part is it takes a lot to get the rear end to kick out on this car. It's not going to do it under any normal driving circumstances. You'll have to have the traction control off, and you'll have to be fully mashed to the floor in order to even remotely try and get this car to break loose, which I think is fantastic, which means for 99% of the population, you will never be able to outdrive this car, which is always a plus, especially when it comes to sports cars, and it makes you more confident as a driver as well. As far as the visibility, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, these A-pillars give you a really cool sporty feeling, and you can feel the low setness of the hood. But the main problem is, because we do have a sort of fastback style car, you can have a little bit of a blind spot when you go to check back. But of course, this car has some of the safety assists we can see when a car is behind us, like it is currently when it's lit up there in the mirror. But that's super helpful. We haven't had any issues with it. Aside from that, it's just one of those things that in order to have such a good looking car, you have to accept that maybe you might have a few blind spots due to the fastback nature of the car. But really, it's just a phenomenal car. The steering adjustment is pretty good. It doesn't feel overly overboosted or anything like that. It's not super direct or stiff or hard to turn, but it's just a good, enjoyable driving experience. And with the audible tone that you get from the engine, it's just a good time. It's just a ton of joy to drive, not to mention, again, all the compliments you'll be getting and just the sound that you get to enjoy while you drive this car. So that's the basics of it. Of course, I can tell you more about it and tell you about my impressions all day, but ultimately it's going to be up to you to make sure that this is the car that fits for you. Make sure it's adjustable in a way that you like. Make sure the lumbar support fits the way you like. So ultimately, you're going to have to head to your local dealership and take one of these for a drive just to make sure it's the car for you. There is nothing quite like the Lexus LC500. The fact of the matter is that if you like this car and you're planning on purchasing one, that is the only way that you'll be able to satisfy the urge. There is no other car like this on the market that has the same unique styling and presence that this car has, including the best taillights on the market. It has that awesome naturally aspirated V8, which is in rare air these days to find something like that. And on top of that, you get all of the luxury and reliability that's expected in a Lexus model like this. This car thrives as Lexus's flagship model and is sure to bring you a ton of joy and compliments along the way. So with that, that's going to be the end of the video. This is the V8 version of the Lexus LC500 Coupe. We did make a video on a coupe version of the hybrid, so be sure to check that out if you're interested in checking out that version of the LC500 as well. With that, if you enjoyed the video, could hit that like button for us. We'd really appreciate it. Consider commenting below if you're already an LC500 owner or are planning on purchasing one. And of course, get subscribed so you don't miss more content like this in the future. Thank you so much again to Lexus for letting us borrow this vehicle and take it to California to experience it. And of course, thank you so much for watching this video.